When I was growing up, there was no Google, there was no internet. So I suffered in silence. What I found throughout my life as an antidote to that is self-compassion. When we cultivate self-compassion, we then build self-worth. And in the book, I break down exactly what that means and then how you do it. That's what I love about this book, because what annoyed me was when I was growing up, I was like, I get that I need to learn to love myself, but nobody said how to do it, right? I'm so excited for this book to be out worldwide. Every human needs to learn this, not just people in the United States or not just people in this country, everybody. What I have learned after being this therapist and coach for all these years, and also being very intuitive and working with thousands of people over the years, whether it be through individual sessions, through groups, through the membership, through live events, what I have learned is that every single human needs what's in the adult chair. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt in my mind. In fact, the whole reason I wrote the book and where the book has come from is that it's based on 25 years of working with people. What do people typically need over and over and over and over again when they come in and they ask me questions, or when I'm on a stage and I'm working with people? It's the same thing. So that's what the whole book is about. It is about who we are today and then how we got this way. And again, there's never blame or judgment, but it gives humans and people a deeper understanding of who we are. So then we go, oh, this is what's going on with me. This makes sense. So the whole part 2 of the book are the 5 pillars. So this is what I collected over 25 years of working with people. And I said to myself, what is it? And I remember writing this out when I was going through the whole book, when I was kind of creating the book before I started. What have I worked with people on more than anything over the course of 25 years? It's these 5 things. The 5 pillars are: I take responsibility for my life. It doesn't mean I blame myself or judge myself, but I take responsibility. I own my life. I own who I am today. I have self-compassion. I was someone that lived with so much self-judgment and self-hatred, right? I think so many humans relate to that. And I didn't know what to do with it. When I was growing up, there was no Google, there was no internet. So I suffered in silence. And what I found throughout my life as an antidote to that is self-compassion. And in the book, I break down exactly what that means and then how you do it. That's what I love about this book and what people have said to me for years. And I don't even mean to do this, but it's like how I think. I simplify everything and I break it down and then I teach the how-to. Because what annoyed me was when I was growing up, I was like, I get that I need to learn to love myself, but nobody said how to do it, right? I'm like, the book gives us the how-to. So anyway, when we cultivate self-compassion, which is pillar, I think 1 or 2, it's one of the 5, we then build self-worth, something I was lacking growing up. We build self-love, another thing I was lacking, and I didn't know how to do it. People would say to me, you need to learn how to love yourself. I'm like, how? Teach me how to do that. I don't know how to do that. So that's it. It's like you have to learn self-compassion. And again, in the book, I've got exercises. I've got examples. I break it down so simply. Another pillar, I feel my emotions. I did not know how to do that. I reacted to my emotions. I'd have an emotion and get mad at other people. I didn't know what that meant. And that, it's funny because I had clients all those years that I saw clients individually. Again, even to this day, when I sit on stage and I do live events or online events, and I'll say to somebody, well, how does that feel to you? What emotions coming up? I can't tell you the number of times that people said to me, what do you mean? or I'd hear, well, I'm mad, or it makes me happy. Or they'd say to me, well, how do you think it makes me feel? I'm like, okay. And then I'd say, well, where do you feel that in your body? And again, we don't need to know what the word is. Like, I feel less than, or I feel frustrated, or I feel like I don't matter, or I'm not lovable. And oftentimes we know that. But even more importantly, I'd say, can you feel it in your body? Where do you feel it in your body? And people would say to me in my head, I'm like, okay, drop below the chin. We've got to learn how to live embodied, which is below the chin. In the head, as I'm analyzing it, I want to drop below the chin. So when they would do that, they'd start to get clearer about what they were feeling. And sometimes it wouldn't feel good, but this is what I found about emotions in the course of studying emotions on how I needed to do it all those years. And many people have talked about this, and someone that I reference in the book is Jill Bolte Taylor. And she had a stroke that froze basically I'm going to make this very simplified again. It froze the right horn, or turned off the the left hemisphere of her brain, which means she only lived in the right hemisphere, which is where we feel emotions. And she learned that you feel and process an emotion in 90 seconds. That's it. So what I learned, again, from my own life experience and from working with people, is that the only reason that emotions linger is because we make a story up about it. Last month, I was teary-eyed all month about my dog that died last year. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Didn't make up a story about it. That's how we feel emotions. I didn't say to myself, what's wrong with me? Am I depressed? Why am I crying about my dog? Why am I feeling what am I doing? When we feel an emotion, we just let it through. What I said instead is, wow, this grief is here for Maya. I'm going to let it through. I'm going to feel it. And I cried. And I put my hand on my heart and I did some deep breathing and I let it through. So anyway, that's what we want to do with emotions. And humans aren't great at emotions. So humans stumble through their emotions. And we do all kinds of things around our emotions, which then leads me to the next pillar. I own my triggers. Because again, in my own life, I was so triggered all the time. I had emotional dysregulation. I was someone that could not keep myself in balance very well until I learned about triggers, until I studied what goes on in what we call the shadow, which is our unconscious mind. That's what the term that Carl Jung talks about. So I found with my clients, the same thing I was practicing with myself. I started working with them. I'm like, well, wait a minute. You want the people out there to change, or the circumstances out there in your reality to change, so that then you can be happy. And the truth of the matter is, it's an inside job. Many times I would say to my husband, my mother, my whomever, you need to stop doing that. It doesn't make me feel good. So that's a boundary. But what I learned that helped me with triggers more than anything was, and this is why I say triggers are a gift. Triggers reveal and bring up for us the unconscious or unknown beliefs, limiting beliefs or wounding that we have, if we're willing to look. So what happens is when we're triggered, there's something coming up within us that doesn't feel good. It's something that we pushed down and into the shadow or the unconscious mind many years ago. In fact, Carl Jung talks about, I believe he said, most of our unconscious beliefs, the limiting beliefs and all, are stored in the shadow by the age of 3. Yeah, kind of crazy, right? So when we are triggered, I look at it as a gift because it's a beautiful way for us to get in touch with our limiting, unknown, unconscious beliefs. And it's a hard one because, man, when you make me mad or those outside circumstances outside of me make me angry or upset or frustrated or unlovable, I've got to then be willing to turn towards self and look at that thing that's on a silver platter in front of me and say, hey, hold on. What is this about for me? Why is this here for me? Let me understand this. Let me feel this. So in the book, I go through what do you do with triggers when you are triggered in order to process triggers, in order to work that trigger so you can own that trigger. And owning it is not about self-judgment or blame ever. It is about owning this is mine. I don't even know where it came from. It came from when I was maybe 6 months old or a year. And I didn't feel lovable for whatever reason. But here it is, and so in front of me, or this thing on the news or whatever it is bringing it up for me so I can then live in greater balance. It's taking responsibility, which again, we go back to pillar number 1. So anyway, in the book, I go through exactly how you work with triggers. How do you work with triggers? How do you manage triggers and how do you own them? Which then leads to a life that's filled with greater peace and balance. That's what we're all going for. We're going for peace and balance. And I speak from experience on this. I was someone that was so emotionally dysregulated, and my teenage years and in my 20s and in my 30s, I started really practicing. Okay, I got to look at this stuff. It's mine. And I still practice it to this day. But people that know me now say, you are a completely different person. And I'm like, yeah, I'm able to ground into who I am. I realized when I was so triggered and emotionally dysregulated, you can't ground. I can't live in the moment. Now I live in the moment. But I had to learn how to work my triggers. And if more humans could see triggers like this, we would live in an unbelievable world. So that's again, I'm so excited for this book to be out worldwide. Every human needs to learn this, not just people in the United States or not just people in this country, everybody. Last one is our boundaries, something I also struggled with. So many people are so bad at them. We don't know how to set them. We don't know when to set them. I can't tell you the number of people that I worked with, and I'm like, well, I think a boundary might be in order. That might be a great idea right now to set a boundary with so and so. And the responses was always something like, well, I'm not a confrontational person, so I'm not going to set a boundary. And I'd say, boundaries are not confrontational, although they can be, and those are the unhealthy ones. I'm not suggesting an unhealthy boundary. But when we grow up or witness people that might have been rageful or have rage is just explosive anger, explosive and uncontrolled anger, it's terrifying. And you better believe it. Most of us, especially for children, we shut down because it does feel scary to us. And a lot of us had training like that. I had an uncle that did that. So for me, I shrunk or disassociated as a little girl growing up. And I learned that. And it was a great tool. And that's the thing. I've worked with people that they shame themselves. Well, why do I disassociate? Oh my God. Well, God bless you did that. Like, what a great skill you learned. And you needed that when you were growing up. So why is that a bad thing? I had an issue with food. I went from, and I still do to this day, I have to be very mindful with food because I can unconsciously eat. And I went through binging phases in my life. I went through a little bit of anorexia in my life in college because food for me was a way that I numbed out. And I'm grateful because it was something that was available to me as a child when I lived in a home where there was, and I say that every summer I lived in a home with my grandmother who drank way too much, my uncle who drank way too much and was a rager, and my mom and dad and my sister. We lived on this beautiful lake, and on the outside looking in, what a dream life, right? Like, oh, I lived on a lake and we skied and sailed and boated and fished and it was so wonderful. And I had many of those, tons of those great experiences. But behind closed doors, there was a lot of drinking with my uncle and my grandmother. And I have a lot of memories of being really scared too. So I learned to disassociate. I learned how to use food as a little kid. So now as an adult, I know how to do that. I know what to do with that stuff now because I've learned how to grow into a healthy adult. And that's what the whole book is about. How do we grow a healthy adult self? Because most humans, we are walking around physically human, but inside, and if you look at the first part of the book, it's the three chairs, the child, the adolescent, adult. We're walking around as adolescents or as younger versions of self in a physical body that is not the same age. So yeah, so boundaries are fun. I teach exactly the magic formula to set boundaries because it's not just about the scripts. I can give people scripts all day long. It doesn't matter. Scripts are great, but you have to have other ingredients into boundaries, and it has more to do with yourself. You have to do inner work in order to set boundaries, which is why it's number 5 on the list of pillars. You've got to go through the other steps, and it doesn't mean it's going to take you 10 years by any means. Once you go through these other pillars, boundaries become easier. And I might even add my tolerance for other people bumping into my boundaries, right? Or when someone crosses a boundary, let's say that. My tolerance for that now at the age I am today, because I've done this work with these pillars, is really low. It's much easier. And I'm going to even say it almost feels natural to speak up and set a boundary. Yeah. So there's the book. That's the book. That's what it's all about. And I say this too. It's like, it is It is the manual. I'm calling it a manual. It's not a true manual, but it feels like, as I just read it for the audio version, it was so fun. It actually brought me to tears. And I said, damn, I wish I had this when I was a teenager before I left the nest and went out in the real world. I really feel like it's the manual to live a healthy, functioning life as an adult. It's a book for, yeah, teenagers could read it, but most adults need this book because we didn't have that. We need really healthy role models so we can become healthy adults. And most of us didn't have that. Or we might have had parents, let's say, that taught us healthy boundaries, let's say, but they didn't teach us how to feel our emotions, or they didn't know what to do with emotions. People talk to me like some people I know, like clients and even personal friends. I grew up in a house that was very, they grew up in a house that was very quiet. There wasn't a lot of yelling. There might have been a little bit of drinking, but no big deal. They felt loved, but there were no emotions. There wasn't a lot of physical touch. Maybe dad got angry sometimes and was triggered a lot, but there wasn't a lot of communication. There wasn't a lot of communicating around about how you feel or self-compassion or things of that nature. So every human has wounding. We can't come here as souls and not have wounding growing up. It's part of our life experience. Excuse me. It's part of our soul experience as to why we chose to come here. Some of us had more extreme childhoods and life experiences and others didn't. But regardless of what sort of life path you've had, extreme or not, every human has wounding. Every human does. You can't escape it. And we all need help with these 5 pillars. So that's why I call it the manual that every adult needs. It really will help. It helps us to become not just better humans, better partners. So we're better in relationships. Oh my gosh, it teaches you so much about how to have healthy relationships. It helps you as a parent. If you're a parent, you got to be healthy. You got to learn how to manage your triggers because children in the household absorb. You don't even have to sit down and tell your kids, we're not going to feel emotions. Like if you're not feeling your emotions, your kids are learning how not to feel their emotions, not because you're even saying a word. So parents need this book. Partners need this book. Like it's just a book that anyone can plug into their lives and truly create more peace and balance. And I don't love the word happiness because to me, happiness is spiky. We get happy when we have a car. We get, oh, I got a new car. I'm so happy. Or this outfit, I love it. I'm so happy. But happiness spikes and then it falls. The question is where do you want to fall and fall into balance? Like what feels like balance for you? Is it a place where you're, again, where you're setting these healthier boundaries and you're not triggered all the time and you can live more in balance? I think that's what every human wants more than anything. It's just more peace and balance in their lives. And that's the promise and the hope, honestly, of the book.